Hi guys, forgive my makeupless face. I realized that I haven't talked about my travels in Colombia yet. So yeah, I think I ended off my first video with finishing the trek and then coming back to Cusco. So yeah, I took a few days to rest in Cusco because my body was basically broken. So I stayed in this pretty kind of chill, quiet hostel called Intro Hostel for maybe like 4 more days, and then I had to fly back to Lima and then spend 1 night in Lima and then fly to Medellin the next day. At this point of the trip, I kind of wanted to make like the last bit of my money stretch as far as it could. So I had always, like since my uni days, I'd always wanted to do a bit of volunteering abroad somewhere. Like I remember when I was a teenager, I wanted to actually work in a vineyard in Italy somewhere, and so random. But yeah, I'd heard about these websites where people can basically put up like any ads for like if they need help in their homes or for work in their gardens or vineyards or whatever. These sort of like work placement opportunities. And there's like 2 websites that, well, there's probably more, but there's like 2 popular ones. One's called Workaway and the other one is called Worldpackers, and that's the one I actually ended up using. So yeah, my last few days in Cusco, I was actually just browsing any volunteer or work placements that there were in Colombia because I just wanted to stretch my time away as far as I could. And I ended up like applying to all these random places. I was first looking at Medellin because it obviously made sense that I was flying to Medellin. I was also looking at the northern coast of Colombia because I knew that I wanted to spend time in the sun and on the beach and just be in paradise basically. So yeah, I was kind of like looking at Medellin. I was looking at this town called Palomino that's on the Caribbean coast. I was looking at like the Tayrona National Park area, Cartagena as well, which is also in the north. I was obviously like, I was going to Medellin, so I was happy to spend like maybe a week or 2 there, and then just keep applying, and then just I had my hopes up that I would find somewhere. And I think the day that I was flying to, or the evening that I was flying to Lima, I got a message. One of the hostels that I'd applied to, just outside of Tayrona National Park on the north coast of Colombia, replied to me and asked me if I could start the next day. And I remember just reading this message, sitting at Lima airport, just thinking, I'm in another country right now. I was very shocked and surprised that someone got back to me so quickly, and then I replied to them and said, is it okay if I arrive at the weekend because I'm flying into Medellin and I want to spend like at least a few days there. So I really wanted to see Medellin because everyone that I'd met in Peru so far that had been there had been raving about the place and basically saying it was one of the best cities they'd been to. They said to me, yeah, that's fine, and it was all confirmed. And it was kind of crazy how fast that happened. Yeah, and then I spent about 4 days in Medellin, which was not enough. I really, really want to go back there because there's just so much to do, and the city is just like incredible. Like you can never get bored. It's pretty modern. There's a really good metro system there, and just like the nightlife and the culture. Actually, let me backtrack a bit. When I landed in Colombia, I think the first thing that kind of struck me was how much more diverse it was compared to Peru. That was interesting to see. And then the second thing was the accent. And I remember talking to my cab driver because I got a cab from the airport to my hostel. And you know what? I didn't actually struggle that much talking to him, but I did notice that I had to listen a bit more carefully, and just the accent was wildly different from the Peruvian accent. And once I got to the hostel and I was talking to the receptionist when I was checking in, that's when I realized that they speak in an entirely different way. I was so exhausted, so that made it even harder to kind of concentrate on understanding them. But yeah, it was just different to Peru. Medellin is more like a metropolitan, can you say metropolitan? Yeah, type of city. It's definitely more modern than anywhere I'd seen in Peru. I stayed at a place called the Wandering Paisa. It was in a neighborhood called Laureles, which from what I remember was more in the north. And then I realized that most travelers and backpackers tend to stay in an area called El Poblado, which is where all the more popular hostels are. Like there was a Viajero hostel there, and if you guys don't know Viajero is basically one of the main hostel chains in South America, and each one is like really good, are pretty reliable, and they normally have like a really good social life, but they're not really like party hostels. I think it depends which one you go to. El Poblado was kind of like, that area was basically like made for tourists. Brunch spots everywhere, cafes. It looked very sort of obviously man-made, that's not the right term, but like catered to tourists. Laureles was more of the authentic vibe of Medellin, so I liked Laureles, and the hostel I stayed in was pretty social, and it was pretty nice actually. So the Wandering Paisa, I would recommend that if you're staying in Medellin. And yeah, the second night we ended up going to, well, me and a few friends that I made at the hostel ended up going to Nueva Guardia, which was this dance club that was around the corner from the hostel. Actually, wait, before that we saw the Colombia versus Brazil football match. I don't know if it was like the South American Cup or if it was like a World Cup qualifying thing. I'm not sure what it was, but so we watched the match in a bar, and the atmosphere was just amazing. And Colombia ended up beating Brazil, and it was just, yeah, it was amazing. I've never been in like an atmosphere like that. And then after the match, everyone basically just ended up dancing. It all looked so amazing. Yeah, and then after that we went to the dance club, and we had to pay 4,000 pesos, which is, I think that's pretty cheap in pounds, but we got in there. It was literally like a social dance, like everyone was on the dance floor, loud salsa music on, and everyone was just having a good time. And the weird thing was that every single person was an amazing dancer, like literally everybody. And you would never ever see that here in a club or like a dance club here in the UK, and it was just incredible. And I thought I could just sit there and chill and just enjoy watching everyone have a great time. But no, that did not happen, because I was asked to dance like 4 or 5 times, or maybe even 6, I don't even remember. But it got to a point where like every time I would get back to my seat after having danced with someone, I would make sure that at the end of the next song I'll just be like looking at the ground, not giving anybody eye contact, so that no one could ask me to dance. But that didn't work, unfortunately. But it was, I'll insert some clips, but it was like a really cool atmosphere. And I think just being there just made me kind of regret not having been able to stay in Medellin a lot longer, because I definitely wanted to go back to that dance club, and I never experienced an atmosphere like that before. I think with dancing, I'm fine. When it comes to partner dancing, I'm just not great at it. It's like I've suddenly got 2 left feet, I'm stepping all over my partner's toes, and it's just, I have no rhythm, I have no coordination. But solo dancing, I'm pretty decent, I would say. Yeah, and it just made me wish that I had time to go to Cali to learn how to salsa dance, because Cali, it's like a city on the west coast of Colombia. It's kind of known as the salsa capital of Colombia, and it's where everyone kind of goes, and they spend like a couple of months there to learn how to dance. So I wish that I could have had the opportunity to do that. But Medellin also did a tour of Comuna 13, which used to be one of the most dangerous neighborhoods in the world. And the neighborhood kind of sits on this hill, so like all the houses are like literally built on this hill. that was a really interesting tour, and the tour basically ends right at the top of this hill, and you get to kind of overlook the whole of Medellin, and it's just like an incredible view. Yeah, that's what I basically did in Medellin. 4 days is definitely not enough. So if you're thinking of going there, go there for at least 1 week. And then it was time to get on a really long bus to Santa Marta, because my volunteer placement was at a hostel that was right outside of Tayrona National Park. And it was basically like in the jungle. And I got on a night bus, and I was determined that this was going to be the last night bus I was ever going to be on. It actually was, thank God. People have told me that the bus system in Colombia is definitely not as efficient as in Peru, and they never leave on time. They end up taking way longer than they're supposed to take. So I was really praying, and then by the time I got to the office in the bus station, the ticket office, the lady had said to me, "Oh, the bus has already left. I'm so sorry." And she was gonna like transfer me to the next bus that was leaving at 8 p.m, like a couple hours later. So she was like in the middle of doing that, and then she was like, "Actually, your bus is still here. Like, you're gonna have to run to the end of the terminal." Just run. Me with like my massive rucksack, my smaller backpack on my front, all these random bags full of snacks, because I was prepared for like an 18-hour journey. And then I ran for my life, and then I made it. And I think I ended up sitting next to the only other foreigner on the bus, which was quite a coincidence. 18 hours later, I think it was 18 or 17, I finally landed in Santa Marta. Then in Santa Marta, I literally just had no clue on how to get to the hostel, so I was just like, my best bet is getting a taxi. I knew they were gonna charge me like an extortionate amount to basically get to where I needed to go, because I think it was like an hour drive from the bus station that I was dropped off at in Santa Marta to get to the hostel. I got the cab, and he could only drop me off on the main road, because you basically, to get to this hostel, you had to enter basically had to enter the jungle and get there on foot. So the cab driver kind of dropped me off, and I double checked with him like which way I needed to go, and he was just like, "I don't know." Very useful, of course. So I got off, and I just asked, luckily there was some like sort of fruit vendors and like restaurants on the side of the road, so I went and asked a couple of people where it was, and then they were super nice and helpful and told me where to go, that I had to cross this bridge and then walk through the jungle. I was honestly just not dressed for the weather. I think it was like 30 degrees compared to like 24, 25 degrees in Medellin, and it was way more humid, and I was wearing a hoodie and like a shirt underneath and was sweating, but I was just determined to get there. And so I got to the bridge. Gosh, I'm so detailed with my stories. I got to the bridge, and then I ended up bumping into one of the hostel owners, and she recognized me from my worldpackers profile, and she basically said, "Are you planning on getting there by foot?" And I was like, "Yeah, why not?" And then she said, "You're not, it's gonna take like half an hour with your bag and it's gonna be like awful." She was on her way back to the Netherlands, where she was from, and she said she was going to call one of the moto taxi guys to come and pick me up and get me to the hostel. And I thought, I've never ever been on a moto taxi in my life. Like, I've not been to Southeast Asia, so never done it. I was scared, and I just had to hand my driver my backpack. So he wore my small backpack on his front, I had my big one on my back with all my plastic bags of snacks. He just drove me on all these dirt roads, crossed all these streams, and I thought, oh my god, I'm gonna lose my balance, I'm gonna fall off. So I was really I had my arms around his waist, holding on for dear life. Eventually got to the hostel, got to reception, and told them that I was the new volunteer. And then Alba, who was our volunteer manager, just like shouted out my name, and she just gave me some lunch. I had sancocho, which is like this beef stew with rice. And then, yeah, I kind of felt very welcome, and then they showed me to my bed in the volunteer dorm, and I think I just slept until dinner time because I was exhausted. Yeah, and then that was the start of my month volunteering in the hostel. And this hostel is basically like this incredible place in like an area called Trompito, which is full of like all these amazing like hills. It was literally in the jungle. I basically had to help out in the kitchen, work behind the bar, and run these like activity shifts, which is where we took some guests to the nearby waterfalls and the natural pools, which was really cool and didn't really feel like work. It was such a fun time. I made really, really good friends with some of the other volunteers, and then it was like a 5-day working week and then 2 days off. I had to work 6 hours a day. And on the weekends off, I just explored like the nearby places. I went to Costeño Beach to stay at a hostel there for a night, to Santa Marta for a weekend, which is the neighboring city. I also went to Minca for my birthday weekend, and Minca is basically this town that is up in the mountains, kind of overlooking Santa Marta, and it is just the most like serene and peaceful place. Like honestly, if you're ever in Colombia, like in the north, I would 100% recommend Minca, and it was honestly the best place to spend my birthday. It was just such a wholesome weekend. It was so nice. I went there with my friend Dora, who was another volunteer at the hostel I was at. On my birthday, I met up with my friend Flora, who was also another volunteer, and just spent my birthday with her and her brother, and just visiting waterfalls. She cooked me some dinner on my birthday night, which was so sweet. And we stayed in this hostel called Jungle Joe, which was quite a quiet hostel. It had a kitchen. It had these kind of nets where you could just sit and chill on and watch the sunset and just hear the birds and the crickets at night. And it was honestly the most peaceful place. I remember waking up there on the first morning that we were there, and right outside our dorm there's kind of like this lounge area, and there's like this little area where you can do yoga, and you're just surrounded by all these trees and nature, and it was just so amazing. Like it was just, I can't even describe it. It was the nicest spot. So Jungle Joe, I recommend. My first night in Minca, I stayed in a place called Casa Loma, which again, I think that's another popular one in Minca, but it's like a real hike to get up there. It's quite tiring. Yeah, again, they're like overlooking overlooking Santa Marta, and they get to see the best sunsets, and they have live music there most evenings, and that was like a really beautiful place. I really loved that. So stayed in Minca for my birthday weekend, and then I had one more week left at my volunteer hostel. I didn't mention this, but the hostel that I volunteered at was called the Valley Hostel. And it was basically owned by this Dutch couple who had kind of made it back in 2021, like during COVID times. And now I guess they just live there, and it's a really, really cool place. So if you're going to Tayrona Park and you need somewhere to stay like the night before, I would definitely recommend that hostel. Now they've got like quite a big pool there, which they did not have while I was working there. And I was really disappointed about that. I had one more week of working there. Unfortunately, I got food poisoning a couple days after my birthday, and that last whole week was just a write-off because I could not. I had like a horrible fever, and my symptoms lasted for like almost a week. At the end of the week, I was supposed to go to Tayrona Park with my friend Dora, and I was feeling somewhat better. I still had like a really funny stomach, but was able to go to Tayrona Park and stay there for a night in a hammock, which was not the most comfortable thing, but Definitely a really cool experience. We stayed at Cabo San Juan at the camp there, because I didn't really want to go to Playa Brava. Actually, it's just Playa Brava is supposed to be like one of the more remote beaches there in Tayrona National Park, and it's supposed to be like a really hard hike back to the entrance the next day. So I just knew that my body didn't have it in me to do that. Yeah, and then the day that we were leaving Tayrona Park, I was actually leaving I'd finished my volunteer placement, so I went back to pick up all my bags and go to Palomino that night. Just hopped on the bus to get to Palomino, and I stayed at this place called Casa do Pavo Real, which it was a really beautiful place. Like, it doesn't even look like a hostel, it looks like a hotel from the outside. And they had a good breakfast, and it was literally a 5-minute walk from the beach. And I only really spent one day there, like an evening and one day, and I wish I could have stayed there for 2 days longer, but then I was going to Cartagena after Palomino, and yeah, Cartagena, I think I spent around 3 days there, and yeah, I ended up meeting up with a friend that I'd made at the hostel I was volunteering at, and a couple of her friends, and we ended up just hanging out those days that I was there and going out. And yeah, Cartagena was super cool, amazing atmosphere at night, but you have to be really careful because it does get dangerous at night. Like, a lot of people do get mugged. I think the only thing I regret not doing was going to this really cool bar where they play live music and everyone just dances, and I think it was called Havana, and it's like a really popular, like, famous place in Cartagena. Yeah, we didn't end up going there, so that is a massive regret of mine, but if I am there again one day, I think I will go just for that. Just to experience what it's like inside there, because it looked amazing. The day before Christmas Eve, it was time to go back home, and I flew back to Bogota, and then got on a flight to London from Bogota, and then I got back to the UK on Christmas Eve, and that was the end of my time. But honestly, at the end of it, I was just looking back, like, at my trip and all the good memories and all the good friends I'd made, and I just felt really, really lucky to have been able to do all that. It was just, yeah, one of the most incredible experiences, and I recommend it 100%. If you have any questions about anything else, I tend to waffle on a lot, but I will just list all the recommendations, like hostels or restaurants and things like that, down below. And yeah, Colombia was incredible, but I am definitely going to go back at some point in my life, because I didn't get to see the coffee region. I didn't get to go to this place called, I think it's Salento. There's like a place that has the highest palm trees in the world, and I didn't get to go there. I think Bogota wasn't really on my, it was on my list to go, but it wasn't really like a priority place to go. I wish I got to visit like some of the surrounding islands, like the Rosario Islands, the Pacific coast, but yeah, I mean, in the future, hopefully I'm going to try and go with some friends, and yeah, I definitely recommend it as a holiday destination or a backpacking destination. It's incredible. Yeah.